authors research the retellings that they're going to be writing, because we know when it comes to retellings, you have to tell the original story, but in a unique way. You need to twist up the motives. You need to change the location. You need to give them different logic and different reactions and different emotions. You need to have the touchstones, but put them in a different order so that when people read your retelling, they know what story it is, but they realize they didn't know the truth behind that story. The thing that they'd always grown up with is actually quite different. But you have to base your retellings on the original text. You cannot base them on Disney movies or other modern retellings of those original stories. So we've got a full masterclass on how to write retellings that I'm going to link down below. Very important for you to watch. It's a 4-part free series for you guys, but I also put in a bunch of other subsequent videos, and there's tons of them that I haven't even added to the playlist. So do your research here on the channel. I have written so many that Book Talk calls me the queen of retellings. So now's the time to drop your questions and to go through all those playlists to help your research on this one. But when it comes to research, you gotta go to the original text. So let's, for example, take a look at the Mulan story. Mulan, according to Disney, is dramatically different than the Ballad of Mulan. In fact, there are 2 original Chinese ballads about Mulan, and both of them end in her unaliving herself. In one of them, she volunteers and everybody knows. In one of them, she sneaks in to the army. It's very, very different depending on which version you're reading, but extremely different from the Disney version of this. You cannot have a Mushu. You cannot have a little brother. You cannot have all of the things inside of the Disney movie are specific to Disney. You can use the word Mulan or the name Mulan because that's from the original. Think about something like Beauty and the Beast. They have taken a very different bend on Beauty and the Beast. They named her Belle. They have Chip and Mrs. Potts and all those characters, and you can't use any of those things, but you can use things from the original. Think about The Little Mermaid. This is a great one. In Disney's version, her name is Ariel, and the Sea Witch's name is Ursula. In the original Hans Christian Andersen version of this, she doesn't have a name. Neither of them have names. So you can't use the name Ursula and you can't use the name Ariel. And you want to stay away from things like making Ursula an octopus. You have to be very mindful of the originals because they're very different. In fact, the original Little Mermaid, she wanted to go to land to get the man and to do the things, and she didn't get him and turned into foam at the end of the story. It completely erased her from the planet because she didn't fulfill her end of the bargain. So going back to the originals is very, very important. And to do that, you need to get on the internet. Now, you want to make sure that you are searching for the original Aladdin story. If you are searching for the original Aladdin story, you're going to find out this is a Chinese story about a lazy boy who lived with his mother who went out to do something at the behest of, I believe, his uncle. And he found the genies, multiple. There are multiple genies in his story. The princess is really bratty. It's a whole very different vibe. And you have to go to Google and you have to search for this. So the original Aladdin, when was Aladdin first created? And you're going to learn the process of how this was not related at all to the book that we all connected to, 1001 Arabian Nights, right? And so doing your research is very important. You want to be mindful of where you're getting this information from. Wikipedia, where anybody can write things, probably is not your best bet, but might give you an idea of what to start searching for. So you can do your Googling here. You're going to ask a lot of questions. We are going to avoid things like ChatGPT because the AI is just not structured for this yet. It's not going to help you, and it could give you really bad information. So you want cited sources. You need to go looking for the original text. A lot of these fairy tales were written by the Grimm brothers or written by Perrault, and you need to go read those original versions. So some of these things will come from oral tradition, and it's just going to be people kind of telling different versions. So you're looking for those earliest versions. Certain things will have been written down from the Grimm brothers, from Perrault, from some of those original text sources, and you want to make sure you're reading those original text sources, not just gathering bits and pieces of information on the internet. So if there is an original version of it, don't go looking for things on the internet, go looking for that text. And that could be on a website, that could be in a book. You can go to your library and you can have a librarian help you with this. You can go looking through some of the text that they have there, but they also have resources online that you may or may not have access to. There are certain things, and this is really important. There are certain things in the educational space that are going to be behind a paywall that you can't get to, or you can't get to because you don't have a college email address or whatever it happens to be. libraries will have access to most of these things, or can get you access to most of these things for free. So you can go to a library and you can get some help with that as well. And then you just want to make sure that you are going back to those original texts, the Grimm brothers, Perrault. You're going to be looking for things that are those original stories or the original written down version of the stories, because certain things are not going to have been created by people like the Grimm brothers or Perrault or any of those original sources. They're just the ones that collected them and created the first written text of them. And so you just need to be mindful of these things. Go back to Hans Christian Andersen's versions of the stories that he wrote, The Little Mermaid and several of the other big ones that we see retold again and again and again. Go and read what he wrote. Go read what Perrault wrote. Go read what the Grimm brothers wrote, and read those original texts. Take notes from there and block out all of the rest. You don't need anything but those original text versions. If it came from oral tradition, you got to go back and find as much information, read things from scholars, look in different books that things have been written for. And the other thing is, some things are just really, really popular, like that are not stories, more like legends. So I'm thinking along the lines of the legend of Jack Frost. There is no real official story for Jack Frost. There's no real lore about him. There's just Jack Frost this and Jack Frost that. And so you can kind of cobble things together that are well-known and well-accepted facts about Jack Frost. You can cobble things together about mythology, where things were not necessarily written down. There's lots of different versions about those things. So you just have to do your research. Some of these things, especially if you are looking at mythology and lore, you're going to have to go back in historical texts. You're going to have to go and research what was painted on walls and on pottery. You're going to have to go and look for historians and people who studied that time period and that culture and those different things where the mythological aspects are coming from. You're going to have to do a ton of research because, especially with something like mythology, you cannot offend anyone, anybody that is connected to that faith or to that people group or to that area. I do recommend staying away from like faith-based things, just so we're not doing anything that is ethically not great. So just be mindful of those, be very, very aware of these things, and then research those originals by going to the internet, by doing your research, by finding out who wrote it first or what historians believe about these things. And depending on what you're doing, where you're retelling it, how you're creating it, you've got to do your research on it. But it mostly comes down to the internet. And then if you have the ability to talk to somebody, that's even better, if they can kind of speak in and act as a consultant to your book to make sure you're getting certain things about certain things correct. Again, depending on what you do. Some of this is going to require more work. Some of it's going to require less work. Everybody knows Cinderella, right? So you can go back and you can read those texts, and that's real easy for you to understand the original version of Cinderella that also doesn't end so great for a lot of people. Those original fairy tales were dark, my friends. A lot of death, dying, and decapitation. And you want to make sure that you are putting that effort in. So do your research. If it's something simple like Cinderella, go read the text, you're good to go. If it's something that's going to be more complicated like mythology, now you got to go talk to some people. You got to get a lot of historical things in context, and then you can create what you are going to be writing. But depending on what you're doing, it will require a different level of involvement, how much time, effort, space you are going to be taking in order to research before you create. You have to have those answers. You have to understand the original. And I do recommend creating a list of facts and information for yourself in your research so you can always go back to it, acting as the anchor point or the show notes Bible for what you are creating, so that you can say, does this make sense? Does this connect? Is it going to be the touchstones? Is it going to be in alignment with the spirit of the first thing that I am going to be retelling? And you can go from there. Drop your questions on this down below and follow along for more as we continue to discuss how you can be creating your retellings, how you can be building up what you are doing, how we can make sure we're safe and legally protected when we're doing it, and all the things you need to create really cool retellings and get them out there in the world, because we need more retellings in this world. For as many as I can write, there needs to be so many more. I love retellings. Everybody loves retellings. Retellings sell really well. So now is your moment. Let me know. What are you working on right now? Drop your questions down below, and we'll see you in tomorrow's episode.